From the Upper Mount Samiesville Studios in Samiesville, Pennsylvania, comes the We Talk Games Interview Starcade! Try it. We'll try to fucking do it.
My dinner while we do this.
Okay, because Skype. Here we go. Welcome to Interview Starcade. I am Wiggly, and on the Skype pipe. Oh no, wait. On Hangout
Yeah.
Balls. It's Kyle Von Cubic.
We're abandoning ship on Skype.
Yeah, we do one show a month, and you know that little 5 minutes a month, you got to eat. You say, I got to eat on these 5 minutes out of an entire month of how many minutes? I don't know how many. It doesn't have zeros.
I know how much you love the sound of eating while recording.
It doesn't end in enough zeros.
Tim, get me some popcorn.
Now I'm hungry for crackers. I'm hungry for crackers. Crotchers.
You know the history between me and my wife and crackers, right?
Yes, you propose with crackers in your mouth.
Not exactly, but that's good enough.
It was funny, whatever it was. She spit in her face with the crackers.
That's it. Hey, fellas.
Yeah, what?
If you're single and you want to impress the ladies, my recommendation would be to shove probably a quarter of a sleeve worth of crackers in your mouth. And then try to say something very sexy to your lady friend while the cracker bits just spray all over her.
I think it's a good idea.
It worked for me.
Yeah.
I'm happily married. I have a child, a house. I'm living the American dream.
Hey, anyway.
Hey!
This is Interview Starcade, but it's also mid-series programming. So last time I said it's going to be a rerun. It is a rerun, and it's a new rerun.
Yeah. Now I'm going to eat.
Okay, so today we're going to talk. Who we got on Interview Starcade today?
Jez San.
Jez Sans.
That's right.
Now,
no, just San.
No, Jez Sans.
I'm willing to bet my mashed potatoes on San.
Jez Sans is his name.
Jez with a Z. Yeah. San.
No, it's Jez with a and Sans with a Z.
No, because he was the founder of Argonaut Software.
I know, and that's
his
why.
His name put together sounds like Jason
and the Argonauts. Why don't you let him tell a story?
This sucks, by the way. It's probably the worst bit we've ever done.
What are you talking about?
Intro we've ever done. No, I'm sure we've done worse.
Yeah.
Hey, the reason why I want to do this interview was because I think it's pretty timely right now with the Super Nintendo Mini or the Super Nintendo Classic being released, and a lot of games on there utilize the FX chip.
Okay.
And what's also interesting is the last time we did a mystery box episode, we talked about the differences between arcade hardware and emulation. And one of the things about emulation for a very long time for the Super Nintendo is that it did not emulate Super FX chip games very well. Well, as an owner of the Super Nintendo Mini, I can say that yes, in fact, and obviously, the hardware emulates the Super FX chip very well with games like Yoshi's Island as well as Star Fox. And it's comparable to the cartridge. And with this interview, you're going to learn about that Super FX chip. You're going to learn about how originally it was supposed to be in the hardware, which is a very interesting little tidbit that we didn't know about until the interview. And you're also going to find out that here's a guy who really helped Nintendo define what their look and system was and gave them something that I don't think they were going to come upon in themselves, which would be a 3D space shooter.
And Boston Mario, Super Mario Brothers, World Brothers, whatever the it's called for the Super. Oh, wait, we don't curse on this one.
Yeah, watch your language. This will work safe.
All right. Also, I thought that the whole reason we were doing this is because I briefly burped out Days of Thunder.
Well, that too. I mean, you briefly bring up Days of Thunder.
Yeah. Hey,
which that's a spoiler for some upcoming episodes, I believe.
Did we lose Jez?
Jez? Did we lose him?
Yeah.
What do you mean? As far as can we get him back on the show?
Is he dead?
No, he's alive.
Oh, thank goodness.
I think you're thinking of Keith Robinson.
Well, I am, but Jez is my age, and that's why, like, I'm 2 months older than him. So I thought, Jesus Christ, maybe I'm dead.
Oh, you could be. I could be speaking to an apparition right now.
Well, I'm glad about Jez being alive. I'll tell you that.
I don't know that for sure.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe by the time you listen to this, you know, in the future, maybe he's dead. Maybe I'm dead in the future.
I wish Jez San, well, I'm not so sure about, but Jez San, I really hope is doing fine.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, life's rough. So I hope I'm dead. I try not to listen to any interviews with anybody. It's been a long time since we did an interview Starcade. They're still out there on the internet. You probably just have to use some type of searching dog of some sort on the fetch engine or whatever. Ask Jeeves.
Can I give a global layer blip? You can go to WeTalkGames.com, scroll down, you'll see the Wigtendo guest boy,
yes.
And you can scroll back and forth and listen to interviews from the past. However, another reason I wanted to do the Jez San interview is because, unfortunately, it didn't make it on that platform because it was towards the tail end of our very long marathon audio magazine episodes. So there's a couple interviews that were missed and we never got to with Interview Starcade. And much like Trip Hawkins, I feel like this interview gives a lot of insight into the industry, how someone breaks into the industry and really gets noticed, you know?
Yeah. Also, the interviews that are in the Wigtendo guest boy are just the interview. When Interview Starcade, we give you the skinny on it.
Sure.
We give you some backstory. We give you some fun facts. And that's why I created Interview Starcade. Also because I wanted to have 10 podcasts I was doing simultaneously.
Yeah, that's always a good idea.
Hey, let's listen to Jez San. I dig this guy, man. All right, Keith, Jez San, let's open it up. London, England. Come in, Jez San. Welcome to We Talk Games.
Hello there.
Hey, it's great to have you all the way from London. You're only the second person that we've had from the UK. The first, of course, being the Fothergill brothers. And I think that you're acquainted with the brothers Fothergill.
That's right, yes. Yeah. They used to work at Argonauts, which was my old baby.
Yes, well, we'll get into Argonaut. We'll get into all those good things that you've been involved with and what you're doing now as well. But first, let's just get this out of the way. Good Things Come from 1966.
Really?
Yes, we're both 1966ers.
Wow, which month are you?
January.
Okay, you're older. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a little older. Let's not start off on rocky grounds. Okay. I don't know where to begin. We'll jump around a little bit here. I think you have to jump around because you've been involved in a lot of games that, well, definitely that I grew up on. You have a lot of technologies that are entangled across the years. They span the years. I read your wiki, and of course, everyone knows that Wikipedia is probably the most exact way to find out everything you need to know without any type of embellishments whatsoever.
My wiki's not very good, because I didn't write it, obviously.
Okay.
And my wiki's written usually by people that have a grudge against me. And so there's several unflattering things in my wiki.
I see.
Which, if I was a bit more vain, which one day I might get around to, I will remove.
Yeah, everything that's been written about me in Wikipedia has been removed by Wikipedia themselves, mostly because they say that it doesn't cite sources, although my entire life has been available on the internet for the past at least 7 years. So
the thing is, it's supposed to be a democratic encyclopedia. I feel I should have the ability to modify my own entry, but how negative it is, so it obviously wasn't written by me.
Okay. Well, is it true that you started doing BASIC on the TRS-80?
Yes, that's true. In 77, I got my TRS-80.
Wow, fantastic. Now, that was, of course, Tandy.
Yes. Radio Shack.
Yeah, Radio Shack, exactly. Now, what did you have Radio Shacks in the UK?
No, we had Tandy, but it is, it's the same company.
I see. Now, did you buy any realistic stereos from Tandy?
Luckily not, no. Although I probably did have a CB radio or something from them, but and I had even before my TRS-80, I had a electronics kit when I was very young from Tandy.
Yeah, me too, of course.
With those little spring terminals and the wires and all that stuff. I think I made my first electronics project with that, like when I was like 10 years old or something. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah, you could build the AM radios and all that.
I used to like building that electric shock thing and then letting my friends play with that.
And I remember
loved that.
they had a fake lie detector. You would just be gimmicking it. You would be the one that would set it off if you wanted to pretend that your friend was telling a lie. I remember that. But I just thought of it. Realistic brand. Now you poo-pooed on it, but I remember a lot of audiophiles sort of liked it back in the day, and then
really,
they later became optimists.
Yeah, but I'm from England. We have proper real audiophile stuff in England.
That's true.
We invented audiophile. Realistic is not audiophile compared to what we grew up with.
When I first started my first band, I remember we used my buddy's Realistic Stereo as our PA system, and I was singing into this rectangular, giant stereo Realistic microphone. And it sounded like Pup. So you were right there. But they also came out with a Mini Moog, which I owned the Realistic brand of Mini Moog later on in the band years there.
When I first saw a Moog, I never actually knew what it was, because I came from the computer side. I wasn't really into the music side, so I had no idea what a synthesizer was until it was too late, and it had all been and gone, kind of. Gotcha.
So you began programming on a TRS-80. No love for Texas Instruments, I guess.
The TI-994A or whatever. No, wasn't into that. Umming and ahhing between the TRS-80 and the Oregon Scientific.
Okay.
Which had color, I think, at the time when the TRS-80 had monochrome. But the TRS-80 kind of, I don't know, it just did it for me, so I went for that one. And there were some other ones. There was a British one called the NASCOM 1, which looked very geeky. There were obviously the Altair and all that kind of stuff, but they were just far too geeky. So I think the TRS-80 was the right one for me at the time.
What type of things did you program on there?
My first programs were kind of utilities. So I had one that I won an award for, which was to make my printer do handwriting. Back in the days when dot matrix printers did really blocky script.
Sure.
I wrote a printer driver that anything you printed, it intercepted it and turned it into my handwriting, actually my friend's handwriting, because it was much better than my handwriting.
Wow.
That won me an award, a programming award, back then when I was like 12 years old or something. So that was in the late 70s.
Right.
That was my first thing. And then a friend and I started writing games on the TRS-80, but I never actually completed any games. I mean, I played games. I didn't actually write any games on the TRS-80, although I intended to. And a friend of mine who's now at Microsoft after many years of losing touch with him, he actually wrote a Defender clone on the TRS-80, which never got published, I think, but it was very good. But I started programming games after the TRS-80 when I got my BBC computer.
Okay. And did they have computer classes in schools back then, or was this completely extracurricular?
They actually did, and in my school, I was the one that started the computer class. So
okay.
I was, one of my first of my group into computers, and actually I did have one of the first computers in the UK, because mine was imported from America before they were selling them, like the year before they were selling them in the UK. So I was pretty early into computers, and I could already program before the other people that I knew at school. So I convinced the school to start a computer class, and then obviously I knew more than the teacher, so the teacher would consult with me on the answers to questions, and I would help people with their homework, and I got to sit at the back of the class and play Space Invaders during the lessons.
Fantastic.
And I still got a grade A in the exam, even though I did no work, because it was, it was all common sense to me.
Similar experiences, except I started photography and print shop, so that was not the same type of thing. But I know what you mean about flying by with grades on smarts instead of book studying. Hey, so that's how you got into programming. Now we're the same age, which is great, albeit I'm older. But
those 2 months are a big deal.
They are. I'd like to know about your first gaming experiences, standalones, consoles, arcade memories, things like that.
My group of friends and I, every Friday night, would meet at the Crystal Rooms in Soho, which still is there actually today, but not in the same form. It was the local arcade, although it wasn't so local. It was in the centre of London, and none of us lived in the centre of London, so it was like an hour journey to get to our arcade. But we would do that every Friday night without fail. We'd meet there, play every game there was, and then go to dinner, and then go to a movie, and then go home. So that we did that without fail. So we were into arcade games from a very early age, and even before I was in the industry, we used to crash the arcade shows. Like Jammer was a coin-op show that came to London, and there were some other ones, and we would crash all of those shows and see all the arcade games, play them all for free before they came out. You know, it was a fun time.
Arcades in England, were they full of black lights and disco music blasting, or what was the scene of arcades there?
I think they've ended up that way now. Back then, I think they were just they were lit and kind of serenaded by the sound of their own music. So
okay.
I think the arcades back then, particularly this one, all the machines were turned up on full volume, and so really the only music was the music from the arcade machines. There wasn't much in the way of background music or lights or anything. But now I think that there's actually not that many arcade machines anymore, and I think they're mostly jackpot machines, slots and so on now.
Sure.
So I think that the day of arcades with pure games have gone. Well, I haven't seen any, apart from in Japan, for a long time.
Right on. And most of them are dancing and playing instruments, and not a lot of joystick stuff happening.
Yeah. I mean, when I used to play games, it was before Dance Revolution. So,
sure.
Nowadays, if you go to an arcade, there are a lot of dance machines with it playing a lot of music.
What do you think had a big impact on you? Do you remember a particular machine that you wasted a lot of quarters in, or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the, Defender, Marble Madness, Asteroids, Joust, Star Wars, obviously, that was one of my favorite coin-ops. Some of the Sega machines, Outrun and Afterburner, they took a lot of my time. Sinistar was one of my favorites. Run, the Coward.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, we had a lot of people involved with Sinistar on the show. So
really? Yeah,
I'm very, very happy about that.
I'm still friends with RJ Michael. He was on Sinistar.
Okay. That's one person we haven't touched base with yet.
Oh, you got to hook up with RJ. He's very cool.
Okay, I'll tell Kyle. He gets everything organized. Yeah. You mentioned Star Wars. Is that the Vector Star Wars?
Yes, that was one of my favorite coin-ops, and obviously that was a big influence on me.
Great. We'll get into that. So you started Argonaut Software, according to Wikipedia, in '82. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. When I was 16 years old, actually a lot of this isn't on Wikipedia because obviously I didn't write Wikipedia.
Right.
But the reason I started the company was, it's not well known, but I was a hacker in my youth, before I was 16. In some of the early hacking books, they did refer to me as an ex-hacker. But I actually stopped hacking when I hit 16, so I stayed the right side of the law when I was of an age where I might have got in trouble for it. In my early youth, I was online on my TRS-80 very early, and on my BBC computer, and I was hacking, as everyone was at the time. One of the companies I hacked into was the first email provider in England, which is called Telecom Gold, and that was the only email system that anyone used in England at the time. It was run by British Telecom. I had figured out how to hack into their system, and then I'd written them a report on how to plug the city holes so that other people couldn't hack in the way I did. And they actually paid me for that report. And the reason why I started Argonaut Software was because I didn't want it to look like I was some 15-year-old guy writing a security report. So I wanted to pretend I was working for this company that had done them a security report. And so I started Argonaut when I was 16 years old. And my first job, which it wasn't very much money, but it's £500 when you're 15, 16 years old,
sure.
is good pocket money. So I wanted it to look like it was a bigger, more important company, and I was just a junior employee of that company.
Oh, I see.
And the reason it's called Argonaut is because my name with initials was Jez San, as in Jez San and the Argonauts. So that was a little pun, and never really got mentioned after that, but that was the thinking behind it.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. See,
So then after that, I continued doing security for a while, and I developed some copy protection systems that were in use with some of the early video games, particularly the ones made by Acorn. So I effectively became, poacher turned keeper, and I was, in the security business for a year or two. And then I wanted to write my own computer games, and then I did Starglider.
Yeah, let's spend a little time on Starglider. You mentioned being influenced by the Star Wars vector game, and taking a look back on Starglider was very interesting to me because I haven't played it, in years and years. So it has has a raster dashboard, which creates a play field in the middle, which I don't know what the technical term is for, but it's I call it a postage stamp. So you have less real estate to be moving objects around, and the graphics look vector. Now, is that true vectors in there? Or how,
yes, it was. So the story behind it was I was very influenced by the Star Wars coin-op, and I loved it. And I even bought one for my home, and I actually played it a lot. And I was negotiating with Atari at the time to get the rights to do it for the home, and I really wanted to do it. And then all of a sudden they broke off discussion with me and said, no, we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So at that point, instead of building a Star Wars coin-op, I wanted to do something that was similar, but in my eyes better, certainly different, but using similar graphics technology. So I played around a lot with vector graphics, and I figured out how to do it, and I figured out how to do it really fast on not very powerful computers. And I designed some math technology that could multiply numbers very quickly and divide numbers very quickly, which you needed to do 3D math. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the first things I did was sold my math routines to Sublogic, which is the company that did Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Oh, okay.
And they bought because anyone that does 3D games and even 3D fight simulators, they all have the same problem, which is how to do 3D math quickly on a very low-end CPU. And I had figured out a way of doing that very efficiently. So even before I used it in my own games, I sold it to other people to use in their games. So there was my 3D math in some other people's products.
I see.
That wasn't the first time that I did that, as you'll hear as we go on further. But I was building this game called Starglider. I actually had bought a Mac, a classic Mac, to learn how to program a 68,000 assembly. Actually, no, I had a QL before then. So I bought the Mac and I used that as a development system. This is before the Amiga and the Atari ST computers came out.
Okay.
When the Amiga was announced, I went to the first developer conference when it was still codenamed the Lorraine. And then the Atari ST came out. So I had Starglider running on both of those computers very, very early, like literally before they came out. And as you probably remember, I made a disc so that the game was sold so that the Atari and the Amiga versions were on the same disc. And that was considered, kind of cool.
Sure.
But actually had the wrong effect for me. Because originally I did it because I thought that if the retailers only needed to stock one version, they would stock more because they didn't need to divide up their stock into Atari and Amiga versions. So I thought it would help me increase sales and reduce the burden of stock complexity for the retailers. It had the opposite effect, unfortunately, because they realized that they didn't need to stock two sets of copies, they just needed to stock one set of copies.
Gotcha.
And so no, it didn't work the way I planned. So my technology solution to the problem didn't solve the right problem.
Starglider, when did that come out? I mean, around how old were you?
It was mid-ish 80s.
Okay, that's right.
I think I'm a bit hazy on the 80s, but I think it was 86 or 87, something like that.
So you were still a young fella. You're still in the early 20s there. This is where we'll probably jump around a little bit. When you look at Starglider now, like a YouTube video, or if you actually go back and play it, and you flash forward and see Star Fox, you can see the foundation for playing Star Fox.
Yes,
really.
In fact, absolutely. And we've skipped a lot, but that's okay. I skipped straight to Starglider. I had done one or two other things before Starglider, but Starglider was, the big one for me, the entree into computer games. So yes, when we first started working with Nintendo, we built a Starglider running on the NES, on the 8-bit NES, called NES Glider, and we showed it to Nintendo. We had done it purely with reverse engineering. We'd figured out how to program their machine. We'd figured out how to do vector graphics on a bitmap machine. We'd done all sorts of very clever stuff, and then we showed it to them, and they were blown away. And they did a big deal with us where they wanted 3 or 4 games from us, but they didn't want them in their exact form. They wanted us to work with Miyamoto San in Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto.
Wow.
And they wanted to match our technology and our kind of 3D games experience with their creativity and character design and their game design experience, and they wanted to marry the two teams together. So we actually had some of our people full-time in Kyoto inside Nintendo's office working directly for Miyamoto-san, and I would regularly fly back and forth every month holding classes with Nintendo, teaching them how to do 3D games and working closely with Miyamoto-san and Izushi-san and a bunch of other Nintendo excellent people. And so we had a very close relationship with Nintendo in the early days.
Wow. Did you spearhead the Super FX chip?
Yes, it was my idea, and it came out of a conversation where having programmed our 3D game on the NES, and then we reprogrammed it in a week or two on the SNES when they gave it to us before it came out. They were impressed but also disappointed that it wasn't significantly better than the NES. And we told them, well, you haven't built a machine designed to do 3D, and had you done that, it would have been much better. So we said, well, we could do that. And I was completely bullshitting because we'd never designed any hardware before, and they wouldn't even have a clue how to do it. But we did know 3D technology, and we were really good programmers. So we had an idea how to do it. But I told Nintendo that we would do it for them if they funded it. And they did fund it. And I hired very smart people to lead the team, and we built the Super FX chip for them. So it was 100% our design. In fact, we codenamed it the Mario chip, which stood for Mathematical Argonaut Rotation I/O chip, input-output chip.
I see.
And they were the ones that called it the Super FX chip. We actually called it the Mario chip.
I gotcha. Well, I have a shirt with the Super FX chip on it for Star Fox, of course.
I mean, they were good memories because, Nintendo... We had a massive advantage working with Nintendo because they knew games, they knew marketing, they knew how to, be very creative. We knew technology, we knew 3D graphics, we knew a bit of hardware, so we were very complementary and we worked together extremely well. So for a few years, the relationship was excellent.
And I don't want to get too far off topic. I definitely want to go back and touch on some of the other titles that you worked on. But I did find it interesting that at the time I was a Nintendo rep around that same time when I had to go out and spread propaganda about the 2 CD add-ons that Nintendo was going to release that they had in the works. One was under negotiation with Philips, and the other one was the Sony PlayStation. And then they bailed out of both of those. But you were actually working on that 3D chip technology or that 3D technology with...
That's right. I mean, when we designed the Super FX chip, originally it was intended to go inside the American Super Nintendo. So we had designed it before the Super NES came out, and Nintendo wanted to put it inside, but because it would have added like $5 to the cost, they decided to put it inside the cartridges instead and make people buy it in the game instead of in the system. And then when they were doing the original PlayStation or the original whatever it was add-on, it was going to be inside that. And
I see.
It could have been, and we had designed it to be able to work that way. And it didn't just do 3D graphics as well. The Super FX chip also could do things that the SNES couldn't do but should have been able to do, like rotate and scale sprites. And so Yoshi's Island, one of my favorite games, was actually designed around what the Super FX chip could do for it as well. So it wasn't just for 3D graphics, it was for general graphics.
Because the Super Nintendo as a system could only scale and rotate backgrounds, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, okay. In F-Zero style, it could only scale and rotate one image, which was used like in F-Zero. It couldn't scale and rotate individual sprites and have them all on screen at the same time, which with the Super FX chip we could do. We not just scale and rotate individual sprites, but we could have an unlimited number of sprites on the screen, whereas Nintendo's hardware traditionally could only have like 8 or some multiple of 8 sprites on the screen. And it was very limited doing it in hardware, whereas we'd done it with graphics software instead.
Right on.
The Super FX chip was actually one of the world's first RISC microprocessors, RISC.
Sure.
And it was for several years it was the best-selling RISC processor until the ARM CPU became standard in GSM cell phones and then sold gazillions of CPUs. And now the ARM is the world's best-selling CPU by a huge margin. But there were a few years when the Super FX came out when it was when it was way up there.
Wow, that all makes sense. It all ties together. I don't ask questions I know the answer to, so I'm always surprised at what I find out.
Well, there's a lot of this background story that isn't really published, or if it is, it's kind of in obscure places.
Fantastic. Let's talk about what do you think was important points in your life, periods of your life that you want to share?
I think getting into video games is very important. I think I had this fascination with 3D graphics, which for many years I was one of the few people in the world doing it, and then all of a sudden every game is 3D now, so sure. I was kind of like one of the early guys doing it. I don't know if I was the pioneer, but I was certainly one of a very small handful of people doing 3D games very early. At the time when it became ubiquitous and it became extremely competitive was the time that I finished with computer games and moved into gaming, which is poker and casino games and the like.
Ah, gotcha. And that's where you're at now, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a tech entrepreneur now, so I do a whole bunch of things. I'm involved with multiple companies, but my baby that's a follow-on to Argonaut is called PKR, and it's an online poker company.
But are you also involved in Originate?
Yes. Originate is an iPhone games company, and I am involved with that.
I love Robot Rampage.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
wow.
that was at the top of the charts there for a while in the States here, and that's when I picked it up. And I really, I have it for the iPad, so it looks beautiful. It has everything that a good iOS game needs. It's simple yet challenging, and it looks great and plays great.
Thank you. There were quite a few games we did that should have done better. Really, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't make Fruit Ninja, which we had, but we did do the game that they ripped off or were heavily influenced by. We were the people that invented that kind of slash mechanic, and we did that in one of Originate's first games. It was used to very good effect in Fruit Ninja, but we definitely did it first.
What game was that?
It's a Monster Kill.
Okay, well, I have to pick that up. And
I think Fruit Ninja is a much better game, but Monster Kill was the first with that dynamic.
Well, you had a company called Monster something.
I have the company used to be called Just Add Monsters. It was a division of Argonaut. When Argonaut hit the wall, I helped them buy themselves out, and it became Ninja Theory. It's doing pretty well. It's had a few very cool games, and it's got a few more very cool ones coming up, including the prequel to Devil May Cry, which is on the horizon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's talk about some of the titles that you were involved with that I recognize that other of our listeners might recognize. And you were involved actually with a lot of franchises. Now, is that because of the parent companies that you were doing business with, like Mindscape? I know that you did the Days of Thunder, and you did a...
Yeah, I think some of those were... There was a time when the only games you could sign up deals for were games of other people's properties. And some of the games we signed up were other people's games. We started with Afterburner, the coin-op. We were one of the few people that could do it. In fact, I personally wrote, I don't know if you remember the coin-op, the balls at the beginning that spin around in 3D.
Sure, of course, yeah.
And change shapes and morph into different shapes.
And then they blow up.
I wrote that bit of the code.
Okay.
That was my only contribution. I didn't write any of the game, but I wrote the 3D balls. So that was fun for me. So we did Afterburner, we did the Mindscape Days of Thunder, we did Harry Potter 1 and 2 for Electronic Arts. So Catwoman, unfortunately, we did that too.
You blew my big gimmick.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We did Alien Resurrection. That was a great game. So yeah, we've done our fair share of licenses. Obviously, we preferred doing our own original creations, but there isn't always a market for that, and you have to have the right IP, and you have to be at the right place at the right time. You have to find a publisher that has a lot of money to spend on marketing a property, doesn't mind marketing someone else's property, and really likes what you've done. So it is actually very hard to get publishers to sign up original IP that has been developed by a game developer, and it's much easier should just sign up and do someone else's property and make an original game of their IP.
Sure. Well, one game that definitely left an impact on me and a lot of people's wallets in the States here was Race Driving.
Yeah, that was very cool. That was an amazing achievement of what we'd done in such a limited platform to do beautiful 3D, almost as good as the coin-op, or so we believed. But no, it was amazing that we were able to achieve that, and we really enjoyed that. That was a very important title for us.
Was that the first game with instant replay, do you know?
I have no idea, to be honest. We did do a number of firsts, but that isn't one that I recall. I mean, it's entirely possible that it was, but we obviously had some of the first 3D games. We had the first 3D texture mapping in a game that was in Star Fox. We had that the boss at the end with the rotating cube. That was the first texture mapping ever used in any computer game on any platform. And we did the first 3D surround sound in a game. That was a game called King Arthur's World. So we literally reverse engineered how Dolby did their surround encoding, and we faked it so that it came out in surround sound if you had a Dolby system at home. We loved innovating, and we loved being the first to do this or the first to do that. I don't remember whether we were the first to do instant replay. Oh, we definitely had the first. We did a 3D fight game called FX Fighter, and we had head-to-head over the internet or direct, modem to modem. We had the first remote fighting game where you could play each other and not be in the same room. We loved innovating.
What are some of the other tech that you sold to bigger companies, just off the top of your head?
So we invented a 3D technology called Brender, BRENDER, and that was used by a number of game companies and also was used by Microsoft. At the time, it was licensed to quite a lot of games companies, and a number of games were built with it. Some that we found out about, some that we didn't find out about. We had a license where we could just license it to them, and they could do what they wanted with it and not tell us. And sometimes we found out, and sometimes we got our name on the box, and sometimes we didn't.
Gotcha.
So a whole bunch of games were developed with that technology. A similar technology to that was also built. I mean, there were three 3D technologies that came out of England. Brender was one. We think it was the most game-centric one. There was one called Rendermorphics, and there was one called Renderware. And Rendermorphics was bought by Microsoft and became DirectX, and became Direct 3D.
Oh.
And in fact, I had an awful phone call from a senior executive at Microsoft, which was very bullyish, and it said, "We're going to buy one of you three, either Brender, Renderware, or Rendermorphics, and the other two are going to go out of business." And that was what the guy from Microsoft said.
Wow.
Luckily, we weren't reliant on selling 3D technology, and we were actually a games company first and a technology company, second or in parallel. So when Microsoft gave away Direct 3D and effectively took away the market for us at the time in selling 3D technology, we obviously had our games to rely on. The other company had to do different things, and actually they went into games after that.
Okay.
But at least, all three companies, they were very competitive, and that made all of the products better.
Yeah.
I think that the seminal time for me was actually signing up Nintendo. It was blowing them away with our technology, them showing us how much they wanted us. They paid us very handsomely for it. We worked very closely with them. But that was a great time because we were really appreciated, and we did a lot of good work for them, and they made some good money and we made some money. That was a very important time for us, and we grew the company significantly from 12 people to 100 people almost overnight off the back of that work. Another important one for us, Croc, was the first 3D platform game. It was a big hit for us, sold millions of copies, and due to the deal that we had with Fox, we actually did very well out of it. It was our own IP, and Croc and Croc 2 made us a very handsome profit, which was great. And we also did similarly well with Harry Potter, but we didn't own the IP for that one. But we did, we were given a very difficult IP, and the other platforms, the PlayStation 2 version and so on, were going to be very high-end, and we had to compete with those. And we did an amazing job on the PlayStation 1 with that IP, and we probably did a better game than they had on the PlayStation 2, or at least a competitive game as them. Except we were on PS1, which sold really well, and so we sold millions of copies of that game. It wasn't just that it was a fantastic IP, an incredibly popular IP, but we also did a really good job with it. Some of the good people from Argonaut have gone on to do good things in their life after Argonaut. Obviously, Rocksteady Studios, I'm sure you've heard of, they did the Batman game Arkham Asylum. Well, that was one of our teams at Argonaut. So Jamie and Sefton were two of our senior managers, and they are the two guys that run that. And in no uncertain terms, they learned a lot from Argonaut, and in fact, I think they're still using part of Argonaut's technology in that game, or certainly they did in their previous game to that. The spirit of Argonaut lives on in many different companies.
Definitely. Star Fox, I talk about it on many We Talk games, that after I played that for the first time, I had dreams about flying around like that for weeks. It just, it really left an impression. Yeah, it really left an impression.
I loved that game, and obviously I loved Starglider, the forerunner to it. And I loved all of Miyamoto's games, so, my favorite game of all time is still Super Mario World, number 4. It was the game that I played solidly, non-stop, no other game for a whole month before it came out, actually. So I may have been one of the first. I may have been the first person in the world to finish it, because I was probably the first person in the world to have a copy of it.
Gotcha.
I love that stuff. Miyamoto's a huge hero of mine.
Jez San, it's been a pleasure. You have definitely influenced a lot of games that I think we've all touched. So thank you very much for taking the time out and being on We Talk Games.
And thank you too, and all the best, my older friend.
Okay, bye now.
Take care.
Jez San, wow, what a fun interview. That's just so much fun for me to do an interview like that. All right, Keith, let's bring on Johnny Capcom and Kyle Von Kubik, and find out what we all been playing. And then definitely the creator of my favorite balls. That guy made my favorite 3D balls of all time.
Yes. You know those balls on the screen? I did that.
Yeah, that's it. Just the balls.
That's another great quote. Yeah. Before video games, I was a pinball. I was a pinball.
I was the balls in Afterburner.
Yes.
What a great interview. And like I said at the beginning, but I think you probably cut me off a little. I tried to go. I did mention that I went on Wikipedia because I like to know, when people were born, if I'm like the same age as them.
Sure.
But I try to just go off of what I know.
Right.
I knew his early games, and I knew he was involved with the Super FX chip. And I didn't know that he wanted to make the NES do vector type of 3D graphics and stuff like that. Yeah. And I had no idea that, I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Star Fox and Super FX on. And that's back when I was a NES representative pushing the Super FX chip and say, hey, look, this has this, so why get a Sega CD? It's terrible. And Nintendo's coming out with their own CD. It's being worked on by Nintendo, Sony, and Philips. Why would you want anything else? It's not going to be a postage stamp made out of 5 gray colors.
You weren't wrong in that propaganda.
I was wrong.
It just didn't turn out to be what we expected.
They made me a f***ing liar, man. Thank you, Nintendo. Up till that time, I never lied in my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm a giant scumbag liar. What do you think about that Jez San interview, fans?
Cool interview. I like that you guys connect on the Radio Shack Tandy level. I know I get a lot of flack because, and it's fair, I normally shit on English games, but I don't shit on English developers, right? Like, I just think that the ZX Spectrum is a bag of garbage. But I think that England as a whole culturally did a very good job at pushing the computer on the younger population. Yeah. And from that, you got a lot of innovative developers from that region who were like, I want to develop something on the Nintendo, so I'm going to break this thing open and figure out how it works, which is incredible. And some of the first foreign third parties that work directly with Nintendo, like Jez San, were from England. We talked about it on the Battletoads episode, Battletoads, the arcade game, where the Stamper brothers were the other English developers for Nintendo, and they were one of the first. It wasn't like American developers were cracking. Atari was too busy crawling up their ass with Tengen. These guys were like trying to work directly and showing them how to utilize their hardware better, and that's extremely impressive. So, as much as I bag on the ZX Spectrum, I want everyone to know that I respect Jez San and the Stamper Brothers and other English developers who worked on very garbage hardware.
Well, I mentioned the brothers Fothergill.
Yes.
And if you look at their games, none of them look European or what you're considering. And I really thought about it now. And you look at Shadow of the Beast and you say, this is really cool drawing. These are really awesome backgrounds. This is a fantastic character. But it's one-dimensional, and that's maybe what you associate with a European game. But I just think there's either good games or bad games, and I think we have to be there now. Like, there's some French games that are good. Maybe one of them. There's the Korean games that came with my Game Park 32. I thought they were gorgeous. They had terrible hit detection, but they could compete with any Japanese style game, that's for sure. If not more, the backgrounds were remarkable.
Well, I think our English listeners will understand my perspective a little bit better, where growing up in the 16-bit era, most of my English experience was through the lens of Ocean, the developer, which notoriously did not put out good games. So because of that, I have a prejudice, you would say, against English games and their art style. But, even a guy like Peter Molyneux with Black and White, I played a lot of that back in the day, and very much an English type game. Or Populous.
Sure.
Another example.
Yeah.
So I played a lot of those games and love those games. It's an easy target, I guess. So to anybody out there who thinks that I don't respect or give credit to English developers, just know that Jez San is somebody I extremely respect. And this is definitely one of my favorite interviews. Listening back, I think it's one of our best. It's probably in the top 10 because of how giving the guest was with their own history, not even how much they contributed, but how much we learned from them just having them on the show. And I like the fact that when you approached interviews, you would come in with what you knew them for and not much else.
And I don't try to put myself over, but I do try to connect to the guests. And that's why when I talk to Tommy Tallarico,
I was just going to bring that up. That's a great example.
Look how much we have in common. Now, I'm not trying to say, hey, I'm a f***ing Mario. I'm a f***ing Tommy Tallarico. I'm just saying that here's something I know about. I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to be like a casual conversation with somebody I just met.
Yeah. I know a lot of people say, like, what the do we know? We only talk about 30-year-old games. But when I hear you talk to a guest and bring up recording music on older PCs and the hardware and tech that you use to do that with the Moogs or using a Tandy or whatever, and you see that connection happen, you don't hear that on any other show.
Right.
Not that I know of, at least.
Yeah, that's my interviewing style, and sometimes I've only had a few bad
now I'm
rubs.
Putting you over.
No. I think it only failed maybe once or twice, and I can't help. Well, I know it failed with Ben Heckendorn. Jesus Christ, the guy yawned.
We had a couple of yawners.
Well,
Walter Day he was sleeping.
Walter Day was sleeping.
We got him on video. He's barely awake.
Well, I cut that out, but that wasn't because he didn't love me.
No, he's just too busy getting yelled at by Billy Mitchell saying, "You got to run the tapes and you got to put me on the leaderboard. I pay your check."
Why are you asking people to bring you televisions? Remember when you tried to do that before with the bottle caps and you had 95,000 bottle caps in a storage bin? I don't know. That was one of the stories. Because they were, who cares about that? That's for a different time.
Exactly.
No, that's for a different time. I did want to defend myself on the Tandy thing.
Well, okay.
My friend, and I only do this because Jez Sands is now dead.
I don't think he's dead.
No, because he can't reply is what I mean. I knew it was sort of a bad area to go with audiophile. What I meant was a much longer thing, which I won't get into now, but there was only one guy I remember. Remember, I'm 52 now. Yeah. Yeah, how about that, huh? Wow. Whew. And I'm still a loser, and, it's crazy. I've not accomplished anything in my life. But the first person I knew that got into computers, I mean, he would build his own computer. That's what you had to do, back then. You soldered your own chips on the board and blah, 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 blah. So I knew him, and he had the closet, the in-the-wall system of stereo stuff. The one guy I knew had it, another guy I knew had it, and they were pretty well off compared to,
You needed to be back then for that.
Yeah. And so they had in-wall closeted type of full realistic audio. Right. I mean, it had the 8-track, it had the cassettes, it had the giant receiver, it had all this stuff, and it sounded phenomenal. So I think it was the high-end realistic that made it. I had a realistic, too. I gotta tell you, it sounded pretty warm.
Yeah.
It sounded pretty warm.
Listening back to the interview, I heard Jez San say, like, in England, we invented the audiophile and things. But it's important to remember that, back in the 70s and the 80s, and there was no internet, and accessibility to different products were just not there. So you would go to Radio Shack.
That's true.
And you would pick up the best they had.
Their high end was probably made by somebody else. I mean, you had to like special order clips and all these other type of speakers and whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Germany had like some of the best audio. So I don't really know what he had in the wall. I would have loved to have asked that. So maybe we can get him back on as long as I don't have to dig him up.
Oh my goodness!
I just think he's dead.
He's not dead.
Who's the guy that died?
Keith Robinson.
Let's get him on the show.
I think we already did an interview Starcade with Keith.
Oh, we did.
If we didn't, we should.
Because I think we did the double of the Monkey Island people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about dead. This show's been dead. Now we just talked longer than the interview with Jez San.
That's okay. That's on course.
Everybody, I hope that you dig the interview Starcade, and I hope that you dig the rest of our summer programming. If you're listening to this out of order of the summer programming in the future,
what are you doing?
Yeah, there must be a lot better stuff on. I mean, we talk about 30-year-old games and 52-year-old people. Come on. Yeah, what are you going to get from that? Tell you what, a lot more than a Nintendo Switch. Holy Christ, what a piece of crap.
Save it for the show.
Oh, okay. Hey, take it easy, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And interview Starcade yourself, I guess. I can't remember what I said at any part of this program.
Keep on trucking.